Welcome to this explainer. If you're the kind of person who wants to cut through the noise and figure out how the world actually works, well, you're in exactly the right place. Today, we're taking a magnifying glass to the biggest brands on the planet. I mean, we interact with these guys every single day, right? But here's the wild part. They are rarely what they appear to be on the surface. That product you're holding in your hand right now, it's probably just a front for something much, much deeper.
Okay, let's dive into this. We're going to completely expose the hidden business models, the invisible infrastructure, the psychological engineering, and honestly, some of the most insane outlier gambles of 10 massive empires. We are stripping away the flashy logos and the clever marketing to look at the real engines powering these absolute juggernauts.
So, Theme 1, the hidden business models. Take Google, for example. Most of us just think of Google as a search engine, right? But it turns out that is probably the biggest misunderstanding in the history of tech. Google is an advertising company, period. That incredibly simple search bar is literally just a front door to get you inside. It all started when two Stanford PhD students had a fairly simple but totally brilliant insight. Web pages that other pages link to more often were probably more trustworthy. Once everyone flocked there to find things, advertisers realized they could pay to jump to the very top of the line. So you use the search for free, the advertiser pays top dollar for your attention, and Google keeps the cash. You see, you are never the customer, you're the product.
And just look at the sheer scale of this for a second. $200 billion. That single early decision to sell the space right above your search results, it generates over $200 billion every single year. It's this quiet, perfectly tuned engine that's been printing money for over 2 decades, without most people ever fully realizing how the machine actually works.
All right, let's look at another one. Starbucks. It seems like just a coffee shop, doesn't it? But the reality is that it essentially operates as a highly sophisticated financial instrument. Back in 1983, Howard Schultz walked into a coffee bar in Milan, Italy. Now, he didn't invent coffee, and he certainly didn't invent cafes. Italy had been doing that for a century. What he did invent was bringing that third place, that space between work and home, to America. But you know that cozy atmosphere and those seasonal lattes, they are actually a brilliant cover for something much bigger.
And this brilliantly illustrates what Starbucks is really doing behind the scenes. It's all about float money. Think about your own Starbucks loyalty app right now. You load money onto the app before you've even thought about ordering a drink, right? Well, that float money amounts to billions of dollars in prepaid balances just sitting in Starbucks' hands before a single cup of coffee is ever poured. Essentially, Starbucks functions like a bank. They're holding your cash to build a $100 billion empire, and it is entirely disguised as your daily caffeine habit.
Moving right along, Theme 2, Invisible Infrastructure Monopolies.
Picture this. It's 1994, and Jeff Bezos leaves his cushy Wall Street job to sell books out of a cramped garage in Seattle. But books were just a low-cost, easy-to-ship starting point. The retail side of the business barely made a dime for its first decade. While the whole world was laser-focused on the shopping cart, Bezos was quietly building Amazon Web Services, or AWS, right underneath it. He started renting out massive computing power to other companies. Today, that very infrastructure runs Netflix, it stores data for NASA and the CIA, and it literally holds up a third of the entire internet. The bookstore? Just a front to own the internet's backbone.
Now, what's really interesting about this next one is the sheer scale of the near miss. Back in 1980, tech giant IBM came to Bill Gates needing an operating system. Minor problem, Gates didn't even have one. So what does he do? He goes and buys one from a nearby company for $50,000. And here's the crazy part. Gates almost sold this operating system outright to IBM for a flat fee and just walked away. One slightly different decision, and Microsoft as we know it probably wouldn't even exist. Instead, he made a totally different choice.
He decided to license it back to IBM. He charged a fee on every single machine they sold. IBM, completely missing the bigger picture, just said yes. You see, Gates grasped a fundamental truth that IBM totally missed. Hardware gets copied. Hardware becomes a commodity. But if you own the software layer that everything runs on, every computer sold anywhere in the world makes you richer. That one single licensing insight, it built a company that's now valued at over $3 trillion. And they didn't have to manufacture a single machine to pull it off.
That strategy of owning the invisible layer connects perfectly to Oracle too. Way back in 1970, IBM actually published a theoretical research paper on relational databases, basically connecting information across tables rather than keeping them in isolated files. IBM wrote the paper, but ironically, they completely ignored their own idea. But Larry Ellison, he read it. He understood exactly what it meant, and he built the product. He created what's known as architectural dependency by embedding Oracle's database software so deeply into banks, governments, airlines, and hospitals, replacing the system became far more expensive and painful than simply paying Oracle to keep it.
And that dominance? Absolutely not an accident. It was driven by a completely ruthless philosophy. As Larry Ellison has publicly stated, his goal in business wasn't just to compete with rivals, but to destroy them completely. Combining that intense take-no-prisoners drive with a single research paper that IBM just tossed aside, that is what allowed Ellison to permanently own the world's data infrastructure, building a $400 billion empire in the process.
All right, let's look at theme 3, engineering human behavior.
Mark Zuckerberg famously built the very first version of Facebook in a single weekend. The original idea was super simple, just a digital directory of university students. But Zuckerberg tapped into a very deep, very primal psychological truth. People don't just want flat, boring information. We want to know what other people are doing, what they're thinking, how they're feeling. Every like, every comment, every little red notification was meticulously engineered to give you a small dopamine hit. Facebook didn't just build a digital directory, they built a completely inescapable psychological loop. And just look at the result of that loop. 3 billion daily users. Meta reaches more than half the human population on Earth every single month. By figuring out how to perfectly engineer those tiny dopamine hits, one guy in a college dorm room managed to create the largest captive audience in the entire history of human communication. It's honestly mind-boggling. We see a very similar mastery of human behavior over in the retail space with Zara. For decades, the traditional fashion industry operated on a super rigid, 6-month seasonal calendar. You try to predict a trend, and if you guess wrong, you lose millions in unsold inventory. Amancio Ortega looked at that model and completely flipped the script. Instead of trying to guess what people might want 6 months from now, Zara watches exactly what they are buying right now, manufactures it immediately, and gets it onto store shelves within just 2 weeks.
So the absolutely crucial point here is how they present those clothes once they're in the store. If you walk into a Zara, you'll probably notice the shelves are deliberately kept half empty. Now, that is not a supply chain failure. It's a highly calculated psychological trick. It's engineered urgency. This manufactured scarcity triggers a massive fear of missing out. Customers know, hey, if I don't buy this jacket right now, it will be gone next week. It forces immediate purchases and ensures you keep coming back just to see what's new.
Nike is another masterclass in this. They completely pivoted from selling a physical product to selling human psychology. In the early days, Phil Knight was literally selling Japanese running shoes out of the trunk of his car, while his partner, Bill Bowerman, was pouring hot liquid rubber into his wife's waffle iron just to invent a lighter sole. Which is crazy, right? A trillion-dollar company started with a kitchen appliance? But while the waffle sole was a great invention, it's not the reason Nike became the absolute behemoth it is today. Their real breakthrough was the decision to stop selling shoes and start selling identity.
You see, "Just do it" is not just a clever marketing slogan. It's a psychological contract. It's the promise that by lacing up that specific shoe, you are instantly connecting yourself to discipline, to athletic greatness, to winning. Nike realized something profound. People don't really buy physical products. They buy who they want to become. And that single realization turned a waffle iron experiment into one of the most powerful brand identities ever constructed.
And finally, let's wrap up with theme 4, the insane outlier gambles. Flashback to 1965. A university student named Fred Smith writes a paper outlining a brand new overnight delivery network. His professor gave it a C, basically calling the idea mediocre. But the insight inside that paper was completely revolutionary. Instead of flying packages point to point, which is what everyone did, Smith proposed that every package, no matter where it's going, flies to one central hub each night, gets sorted, and then flies back out before dawn. It was a hub-and-spoke model that the Postal Service had never even dreamed of doing.
But building that network, it almost completely bankrupted him. In the earliest days of FedEx, they were bleeding cash so fast they literally couldn't afford jet fuel. They were done. So Smith takes the company's very last $5,000, flies to Las Vegas, and plays blackjack. And miraculously, he wins exactly $27,000. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. That massive gamble kept the planes in the air for one crucial extra week, just long enough for a critical investment to finally clear. Today, FedEx moves 15 million packages a day, all because of a C-grade college paper and a lucky hand at a casino.
And then there's the incredible story of Jan Koum and WhatsApp. Koum immigrated to America as a teenager, swept floors just to survive, and taught himself computer programming from cheap, used books. Eventually, he built an app that bypassed telecom SMS fees entirely by sending messages over internet data. Suddenly, anyone in the world could message anyone else totally for free. And his master revenue plan? He charged users just $1 single per year. The giant telecom companies were so busy counting their pennies on every text message that they didn't even notice this guy quietly claiming the daily communication habit of over 1 billion people.
By 2014, Facebook swooped in and acquired WhatsApp for a staggering $19 billion. $19 billion for a company making almost no money simply because they owned the world's attention. So as we wrap up this explainer, I have to ask you, now that the curtain has been pulled back on all these hidden engines, which one shocked you more? Was it Larry Ellison taking a completely ignored IBM paper and building a $400 billion inescapable data empire? Or Jan Koum, the kid who cleaned floors, charged $1 a year, and walked away with $19 billion? Honestly, think about that the next time you search the web, buy a coffee, or send a text. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and remember to always keep questioning the reality behind the illusion.